Hey, hello everyone. It's me, Saransh, and along with me, Divyanshu Mehta. We'll be talking about centralized monitoring and alerting system on AWS. So, in this talk, we'll be talking about different sort of cloud native misconfigurations that are happening around the world and around the most common companies, right? And how to solve these particular problem statements at the same time. So in this talk, we'll be talking about our in-house tool that we have developed, which can be useful for, capturing all these particular issues at one single point and sending out alerts to different teams in a very, very short period of time. This particular tool also acts like a centralized monitoring and alerting system on top of your AWS environment. So we'll be covering all these particular verticals now and quickly jumping on to the introduction. So hey, it's Saransh Rana. I'm currently working for security engineer as CRED at CRED. I'm currently also working as a part-time bug bounty hunter. I'm a red team enthusiast. I like to automate things and I like to read fiction. I like to read science fiction. And at the same time, I like to play music and go for treks, just like everybody else. So these are my social media handles and you can catch me on these particular endpoints. Over to you, Divyanshu now.
So, hey everyone, this is Divyanshu, and I'm also currently working as a security engineer at CRED. I'm a CP certified and a I'm sometimes contributing to open source as well. So you can find some of the open source projects at my GitHub account. So other than this, I'm also currently a red team enthusiastic, learning about and exploring about the red team inside of InfoSec, and sometimes I like to read and trek. So you can hit me on the particular Twitter ID, which is mentioned over here.
Thanks a lot, Divyanshu. So quickly jumping on to the main content of the slides, right? Like what will we be talking about and what sort of things that we'll be covering, right? So the first slide, what we'll be covering is the problem statement, that what specific problems that we are trying to solve. And we'll try to keep you in the loop where we'll give you different certain scenarios where we ask you to think about the same situation that we are covering in this tool, right? So in the problem statement, we'll be covering different sort of areas and different sort of endpoints that this particular tool can be useful for. After that, we'll be talking about the solution that these problem statement usually have. And after that, we'll be introducing our own in-house tool called Dial. Along with that, we'll be covering the AWS services that Dial is currently covering. After that, we'll be deep diving into the technicalities of Dial, where we'll be discussing architecture in depth and how it is deployed and how you can deploy it in your infrastructure at any given time. Post that, we'll be talking about the benefits and the scenarios. Coming on to the scenarios, just like to give a disclaimer that we'll be covering practical attack scenarios and common security misconfigurations that we usually see on the fly. But these particular scenarios are not the only scenarios that Dial is currently covering. It can be a lot of scenarios that Dial can cover, but I would just request you to read the documentation once the talk is completed. After that, we'll be jumping on to the demo where we'll be showing you how resilient and how granular Dial can be and how fast this particular tool can be to notify any sort of security team or any endpoints that you want to. Post that, we'll be discussing about the future roadmap about the tool, and post that will be done. Right. Jumping onto the problem statement. Right? So I would just like to take a step back and would like to ask you few things. So have you come across any situation where you have seen or where you have come across a place where a developer or a DevOps guy has made a database or an S3 bucket accidentally public, right? And I'm pretty sure these particular problems are really, really big for any sort of security team. And actually for doing forensics on top of it, plus finding these particular issues becomes very, 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 it becomes a quite big task. Now, I would like to ask you a different question. Like, have you come across a situation where you have jumped onto an IAM console and you have come across a random policy with a completely random name, but with an administrator level privileges? And at the same time, have you come across a situation where you have actually seen a VPC pairing connection made from your production environment to your a random unknown account, right? And I'm pretty sure these particular problems becomes a very, very, very big task for any security team or any security manager at any given time. So now I would just like you to take a step back, understand these particular problem statement from a very high level overview on how these particular problems actually arise and how we can solve these particular problems at one given period of time. right? So one simple solution for this particular thing is sending out alerts. And that is a very simple thing, right? Just send out alert to any team. But how fast and how resilient this alert can be, we will be seeing, and how this alert can make significant changes during this particular process. We'll be seeing this on the next slide. So now, as we were talking about alert, we'll be talking about the significance of alerts on cloud native environments, right? So coming back to the place where we have, let's say we want to detect any sort of incident that is happening on cloud at any given period of time. One of the preliminary stages of any incident is to check this particular alert, right? Because it helps you to answer that 5 Ws, that is who did it, what did it, when did it happen, where did it happen, and why did it happen at any given time, right? And it can be like how fast it can be and how effective this particular question, answering these questions can be, right? Because at the given point, if you are detecting any incident in a very short period of time, right, it can be very, very helpful for your particular organization to protect your own data. So a simple solution for this particular thing is to look for the right things at the right place. I know it is a very forward set statement, but I think this can be a very, very helpful solution, right? So introducing Dial. Dial is nothing but Did I Alert Lambda. It's its full form. And moving on to the next slide, we can see what Dial does. So it's a Mauder's map. I'm pretty sure you guys must have gone through Harry Potter and see this Mauder's map, where he can actually see everything in one place. So according to that, Dial is simply a real-time threat detection and security misconfiguration detection framework, which helps us to monitor all our AWS account at one single place. All right. Moving on to how Dial works. Dial leverages multiple AWS managed services like CloudTrail, EventBridge, AWS Lambda, etc. At the same time, it is highly infinitely scalable, easily deployable across any number of AWS accounts, and becomes your one point contact for every single thing that you want to actually check on. Moving on to the supported services that Dial currently covers. So currently Dial supports 10 AWS services, managed services, that is EC2, GuardDuty, IAM, S3, ECR, etc. Right. Jumping onto the architecture, right? So I'll just move it up here, right? So as you can see in this architecture, this is the whole deployment of architecture on any given infrastructure. Account 2, account 1 being the number of accounts that you have, and this particular account can be the parent place. So this whole architecture works in two different components, that is the child controller and the parent controller. On the next slide, I'll be talking about the child controller majorly in the depth, and post that I'll be talking about the parent controller. Yeah. Coming on to the child controller. So as you can see, the child controller is sitting on top of one account, right? And similarly, it's sitting on top of another account, and it can be set on different regions as well. So this child controller is actually responsible for aggregating all the alerts from all the different accounts that you're deploying, and sends out it basically parses those particular events in a way where you can actually configure your rule engine, which basically will help you to determine which specific events are actually highly malicious for you or just does not make sense, right? So you can actually differentiate the whole particular process by your highly configured rule-based service engine that we are providing here. So once this is done, the alerts can be sent out to any monitoring solutions that we have, for example, Slack or SNS. Post that, once this message has been sent, what we do is that we send out both the event and the alert back to the straight to the parent controller. So now once we reach the parent controller, what parent controller actually does is that it acts as an aggregator, right? It basically connects all the child controllers at one single point, takes the event and alerts at one particular place, and then you can actually use these particular events or alerts into any sort of solutions that you want to send it out to, be it your threat enrichment, be it your threat hunting, be it geo IP enrichment as well, where you can actually add your geo IP enrichment service on top of it, where you can actually get the location of the incoming IP address and all those sort of things, right? So moving on to the holistic overview, I would like to give the deck to Divyanshu now. Divyanshu, over to you.
Cool. So having now that we have discussed the child controller and parent controller, let's get a brief overview. Let's get a holistic overview of Dial, how this works, and overall overview of Dial. So any API call generated by any AWS service, whether it can be from your AWS CLI, SDK, CDK, or even the GUI management console, is captured by Event Bridge. Now, the event bridge is going to trigger the child controller on the basis of pre-configured routes, which the dial initializes once you install the child controller. Again, this is highly customizable. You can just go ahead and modify the rules which you don't want or the rules which you want to keep. Once the child controller sees the event, it is going to parse it and rephrase it in a very human readable format and send it to any monitoring solution or even a very simple Slack message to the security team to them have a look at. Similarly, the same event along with the alert is then sent to parent controller as well. So as you can see, the child controller and the parent controller are connected via API gateway. So basically what happens is the child controller is going to send the event and the alert as a post request to the API gateway. And then the parent controller is going to read from that API gateway and gets its data. So as it's quite visible, the parent controller is aggregating all the alerts for n number of accounts in an organization at a single place. So instead of going to each and account and looking at what are the alerts or what are the events taking place, you just have to come at single place and just look at the dashboard of anything which you have configured the parent controller to write to. That's it. You don't have to visit each and every account and then do the hard work. Hence, the parent controller can also be integrated with all these SIM solution or any DB or any like third-party solution like the Hive. So now we'll be exploring telling you why we guys preferred Hive. So Dial can again, it can be integrated with many other things. It's just not the Hive. This is just a very small very small concept which we are trying to show why we preferred Hive. So as you can see, the alert was generated by the child controller, the parent controller received it, and a ticket was created in Hive. So if you see, all the events are very properly explained. The case heading specifically tells what the case is all about. And if you look at the severity, TLP, severity, and all those kind of things, you know what the severity is and whom you want to assign that particular ticket to and all those things. The severity is also very subjective. You can actually configure it according to your way. Like if you feel the RDS instance going public is not severe, then configure it in a low manner, or accordingly you can just change the context of the severity as well. Now in the description, if we see, we have all the information needed for an analyst to actually understand the context of the event. We have the title, that is which was the event which happened and what was the database which actually went public. And then the source IP of the person who actually initiated that particular call. Then we have the username of that particular user, like which person did in my account, like which person in my account actually did this. And then we have the event name as well as the location of that IP, which can be enriched by any GUI IP enrichment service. So this is how it kind of helps analysts to just get a brief overview of the event from just one single dashboard. You don't have to look through the CloudTrail and sit and read the event and then understand it. Just come to this, read it, and that's it. You understand now everything related to that event. Again, so as you can see, this is giving us a central web dashboard for monitoring all the events and all the accounts at a single place. And again, it's acting as a one-stop place for any analyst to keep an eye on infrastructure. So now we will talk about metrics, like why exactly we preferred it why exactly we prefer it more. As you can see, this kind of generates metrics on the basis of severity as well, the high, medium, low, everything. This is again, as told, it is highly configurable. What is high for us may not be high for you. So you can modify that as well. So if you see the account events, this is where the things get interesting. So basically you have the account ID. You can actually filter with respect to the account IDs, like which account you felt that the most events are coming from, and then which is the very sensitive account you want to keep a very a proper eye on. Those kind of things you can very easily get a metrics out of it. And then the same thing can be even filtered on the basis of time range as shown in the figure. So Let us talk about the benefits, right? This is the brief overview of RIAL, the architecture, how it works, and why exactly you should care about RIAL. So it can detect and natively parse AWS events in less than 5 seconds, which is almost a real time. We'll kind of show it in demo. This is very, very like close to real time. The moment you do it, you get an alert. So next, it is completely stateless, which makes it infinitely scalable. Next, then the code itself is highly modular. That means that you don't have to understand the full code to add any new service. Just change a small section of code, and then the effect will take place. The next, it is very easy to deploy in multiple AWS account. Again, it's just a single click deployment, right? You don't have to worry about the parent controller. Just go ahead and deploy the child controller in any AWS account you want to cover. That's it. No need to worry about other things. It's highly cost efficient since it is running over Lambda, which is serverless. So these are the benefits. Now let's talk about some of the attacks or misconfiguration scenarios which Dial can support and how Dial will help your organization detect that. So very first thing, we are talking about IAM. So IAM is basically a access control kind of service in AWS, which will allow administrator to give a very granular access to any user. So this should be highly monitored because this is like the keys to the kingdom kind of scene. So next, the very first scenario which we have is multiple access keys creation. So any user, suppose you have some user which has like 5 to 6 access keys. So any user, any that sort of user, you want to get alerted if there are more access keys being added to a single user. Technically, at max, you just have 1 to 2 access keys for a user. These many number of access keys, generally, it is not common, right? So that might be a suspicious event you want to have a look at. Next, we have admin policy creation. So this is again a very sensitive policy creation because admin policy, we want to keep track of who exactly is admin, right? We don't want to lose that track. So anyone creating any admin policy will be alerted because this is again one of the proper ways of doing a privilege escalation in any AWS environment. So it can even auto remediate as well, which will kind of show it in the demo. But yeah, this has the ability to deal with the admin policies creation as well. So next, console login for any account. So what do I mean by this is any organization which is based on a role-based access control, that is a RBAC control. So this is basically this says that a user is supposed to assume a role to log in or to get access to the organization's account. So anyone who just logs in via console is basically bypassing the RBAC access control, right? You don't want that to happen, or if there is any genuine use case, you want to have a look at them. So this basically will alert you for that as well, so that you basically know which user is logging it via console. Next, we have failed authentication. So again, as the name suggests, this kind of detects the password brute force as password brute force because any failed authentication attempts are being logged as well right there. So next we have update access keys. So what do I mean by update access keys is any inactive key, like any key which was inactive before is suddenly made active. You want to keep a track of that as well, right? So there might be a security use case where administrator made some set of keys inactive. Someone just randomly cannot make it active. You need to have a look at them as well. So this is the reason why we included this check. Again, this is highly customizable. If you don't like this or you feel this is not something I as an organization should care about, you can just like disable it by a single on-off kind of switch which we have. Lastly, we have MFA enabled. So if you see, like what this is going to do is we'll be tracking if the MFA has been removed to bypass two-factor authentication. Why this is important is administrators will generally have a two-factor authentication because these are having the admin access to the organization. So if anyone tries to remove the MFA, we need to be alerted because then it becomes an easy target since you are admin and you don't have a two-factor authentication. So again, these are just some of the couple scenarios which are being covered by Dial in respect of IAM. There are multiple other scenarios as well, which will be which is actually covered in Dial, which you can get a sense of by reading the documentation. Next. So this was IAM. Now let's talk about EC2. So now suddenly, say for one random day, you come to notice that your production environment has a random peering connection with some AWS account which you don't even know. So in that case, you don't want to wait for say 1 to 2 months for anyone to notice and inform, right? You want any peering connection which is created, you want to know that like at that moment itself. So this is the reason we kind of added this check. So any peering connection created in your AWS environment will be alerting it for you. And then again, this can be used as a data exfiltration method in by any threat actors. Let us talk about now the security group. Now this is again a very common way for making things public, right? You just attach a public like internet accessible security group to any your resource. This becomes public. So you don't want that to happen as well, right? So this can be this. There might be cases where you might be hosting something very private, and then this by mistakenly is accessible to public. So this is why we added this particular rule to detect these cases. So next we have associating private subnet with public route table. The reason of doing this was we don't want any private subnet to indirectly go public, right? So this is basically making the private subnet public, which we want to avoid. And hence the reason of including this, because this can be used as a data exfil method by attackers. And lastly, we have an unrealistic instance size creation. So what do I mean by this is you as an organization are not using C series of instances, right? Which are like 96 cores or 96 or in TBs of GBs you're not using it, and then someone randomly comes and creates multiple of those instances. You want to be alerted about that, and hence we have a alerting mechanism which will alert you for any instance which is created in your organization, as well as you can tune it in case you want a threshold, like say for instance if the person creates an instance size which is greater than this, you alert me. So this behavior is possible as well. This is highly configurable. This is all up to you on how you want to take advantage of it. So lastly, we have about databases. So now a case you can think of is you have an unknown DB snapshot which was created. Now you do not know it or you did not do it, and it is being shared by some random account which you don't know. So basically you want to know that as well, right? When that snapshot is created, you want to know. So this is the reason we included this as well. So any snapshot created, you will get an alert. So this can be used for data exfiltration or unauthorized access to sensitive databases. Lastly, the very classic mistake which is generally happening is making the production or any important database public. So this will cover that as well. So anyone creating a database which is public will be detected, or any database which was initially private and went public later on will be detected as well. So you'll have a brief, you'll have an overview on any of the infrastructure related databases going public. So this was some of the scenarios which were covered by Dial. Now let us talk about the real time thing, right? Like how do you see it? So we'll show you a small demo of Dial, how it works and those things. So very first we have some snapshots which will give you an overview of Dial. So if you have a look at this basically this alert says that this peering connection, this is the peering ID and was created with some random account, and it was with my dev account. And this is not me, right? This random account I do not own. So I want to know who created this, which peering connection it was created to, and what was the IP of the person who did that. This basically answers all your questions. You get the initiator, the source IP, the location as well, and the peering options which were used during the creation. Next, we have admin policy creation. Now, this is basically telling you that admin policy has been created, and this is the person who actually created it, the source IP and the location. So this might not be interesting for you in dev environment, but you definitely want to keep track of it in prod. So this is one case. Next, we have security groups. So in this particular case, what happened is this particular security group ID was added a new rule saying that internet can access port 22. You want that to be detected and not happen again. So hence this is going to detect that as well. Just come to the dial screen, and then you see the initiator, which person actually did that, and the source IP and what he did exactly. And lastly, the classic RDS instance going public. So this person, this particular initiator created a RDS instance publicly. You are going to know the name of the instance which was being created, the source IP from where that particular person did that. Like all the basic answers are being answered, all the basic questions are being answered by this particular alert. So yeah, this was a snapshot of alerts. Now let us get a live demo. So over here, we are actually making the database public. So we'll be creating a MySQL database and making it public. So let us wait for the creation. So this public access, this is done, yes. So this is now public. Once the moment the creation is done, you will get an alert on Slack saying that, hey, this database is public, look at it. So yeah, this very moment you got an alert which kind of explains that this particular database has been public. This is the person who made it public, and this is the IP of the person who made it public. So basically now the SOC team knows, right? This is the moment this happened, and this is the guy who did that. So tell them to make it private or just delete it. So this is one thing. So similarly, we'll be also covering some other use cases. Now, in case if anyone goes ahead and deletes a DB, they will be alerted for that as well. So we'll be keeping track of any deletions which happens in production environment. So you don't want any random deletion happening. So that is the reason of alerting for deletions. You can actually remove this if you feel that this is not worth your time. Like you can remove this particular event which triggers that particular alert. So now we are going to create a random admin policy with admin privileges. So this is the admin policy, and then we'll have a new action item on star. So this now gives full access to the AWS account. We'll create it, and the moment it is created, it is like very instantly detected and then deleted as well, because the demo is given assuming that this is a production account, and then we don't want any random person to create an admin policy over here. So let us explain the alerts, right? Sarah, just make it full screen. Huh? So yeah, now let us explain the alerts. So the very first alert is admin policy being created, and then we have the admin policy deleted. So this basically tells everything that this particular user was the one who created the admin policy. This was his IP, and this was the name of admin policy. At the last alert is the admin policy being deleted. What was the policy ARN, the policy name, and the person who deleted that admin policy. So this is basically giving you a brief overview of about all the events. And similarly, we have an RDS instance getting deleted. Yeah. So similarly, as mentioned, right, we want to detect the deletion of resources as well. So this is one of the use case. You know the initiator or the person who deleted it, the source IP, and the database name which was being deleted. This is just a small gist of what I just did. You have tons of services over here, and you can get very interesting results out of it. So this is what our future roadmap looks like. We want to add multi-cloud capabilities so that you don't have to, you're not restricted to AWS. You can just go ahead and keep your child control in any cloud environment, whether it be Azure, GCP, or AWS. We are also planning to add more additional services, AWS services. We are researching on them and then looking over the abuse cases which attacker can abuse. Next, we are developing a event bus so that you don't have to sit and configure multiple event bridge in multiple regions. You just need a single event bus which will forward the events from multiple region to a single region. So this will kind of help you out in decreasing the complexity of the installation. So next, the remediation capabilities we want to increase. So as you saw, the IAM policy, the admin IAM policy which was created was automatically deleted. Similarly, we want to add more such use cases to this particular dial. So we are planning to then add as well. And finally, the most important thing is we are planning to make it open source very soon so that the community can take advantage of it. And thank you. This is all we had. If you have any questions, let us know.
Thanks once again, Divyanshu. I'm giving the slide over to the presenters now. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for joining us and being a part of our conference. Please stand by for some questions. Normally it takes a couple of minutes for people to have the information sunk in and processed and to come up with some inquiries. We have a lot of cheering. Based on my knowledge of your guys' national names, these are all your fans, right? you have invited a lot of support people.
Yeah, one of my
They are all
one
rooting
of
for
my
you.
father. Yeah,
That's great. That's great. It's it's very nice to have such support base, guys. If you hear us, this is really impressive. It's cool that you support your speakers. But it would be even more awesome if you post some questions. Please do it in the chat in live stream. And if you are here in Zoom and want to ask a question out loud, please raise your hand and I will give you a virtual microphone. Or you can just type your question into Q&A section or write in the chat and we will address it. Okay, then I will have some holy war inflammatory question while we are waiting. Just from your perspective, having all this experience working with the different types of clouds, what do you think is the good platform for security? Yeah, for a company that wants to go all zero trust, all beyond core PE from day one, what's the best public cloud to choose and not regret?
I would go with AWS because AWS is actually nowadays into a lot of development into the side of security side. And I think like AWS also has a lot of documentation for even for the zero dawn beginners who want to start security and even development on top of AWS. So I think AWS will be one-stop solution for anybody. I think that's my viewpoint.
Yeah, I wanted you to say it because it's like honey to my ears. That was my choice one day, and I'm really glad that I chose that because sometimes you even feel like it's too much. It's too much different ways to achieve some other security goals, and you just do not keep up. Yeah, and you have to like learn constantly and continuously, which may be a good thing, but when you get older you just don't have time for all of that. Okay, any questions? What do you think is the best choice for like if you already have AWS account and you want to, but you never paid a lot of attention to such things as hardening and security configuration and monitoring and alerting and all that kind of stuff, but you want to start from somewhere, what would you recommend people doing, like step 1, step 2, step 3?
Okay, so the first step I would recommend is that just go on with the basics first of all about all the kind of resources that we have. I mean, we shouldn't actually just run around the environment and start spinning up resources just like that. I mean, if you don't have any sort of background knowledge about it. So once you have the background knowledge, you get to understand the main perspective on how it works, and at the same time how security perspective comes on top of it. So I think going on top of like just the basics of all the resources would be the best place, and eventually then moving on to other security services that is provided by AWS.
Nice. But regarding some benchmarks, some good advice, like I don't know, not press a button and get security, but something really non-expert level. Is there anything? There sure is some kind of CIS benchmark for AWS. I'm sure there is. There is for everything, but it's trivial answer. You know, we all know that there is a CIS PDF for everything.
Correct.
Yeah, but maybe something else.
You guys can go ahead with the Cloud Code environment, right? You can start testing out different things, flaws.cloud, cloud code, And
For
I think
sure.
cause.clause is actually, reiterating the versions for testing or different sort of scenarios for testing things on AWS.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. That's a good suggestion. Claudio is cool.
Mhm.
Okay. Still, a lot of cheering, no questions. What's going on, guys? Why am I the only one posing questions? That's not what I am here for. Make my work easier. Come on, ask questions. Nothing? Yeah, normally it signifies that you were overly descriptive in your talk. There is everything clear and and there is no
Yeah, we
ambiguity
try
and
to
no
keep it that way.
questions will follow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite descriptive and quite informative. Okay, then let's, no, we have a question, right? We have a question. Can Dial be integrated with all cloud providers, not only AWS?
So currently we are looking forward with multi-cloud architecture. So we are currently researching on integrating it with GCP and Azure right now, but currently it's only for AWS.
Okay.
Yeah.
How hard would it be? Like, I know that Scout Suite, for instance, yeah, it gives a lot of information about AWS, but when you run it in Azure or GCP, it gives only limited results, I would say. It's still a cool tool when you use AWS, but for other cloud providers, its value is limited. But how hard is it to do something really cross-platform? Because in my imagination, it's virtually impossible already. They are too different.
Right. So basically, I think like the concept that we told about the child controller and the parent controller, right? So what sort of the idea that we are planning on moving forward with the multi-cloud architecture is that we'll be deploying these child controllers on other cloud platforms. So let's say there is a GCP platform that you want to deploy it on, or an Azure platform that you want to deploy it on. And post that, what we'll do is we can send out all the alerts or all the sort of events or messages into one single parent controller. On that basis, that parent controller can be sitting on top of any sort of platform that you want. So that is the one way moving forward with that.
Seems like a credible idea. It may work. Well, I just wish you guys don't have you scale well and have enough contributors not to be burdened with all the maintenance cost that comes with that cross-platforminess. Yeah. You have to maintain diverse skills. For that, you will need other maintainers, right? Experts in those particular platforms.
That's the one of the push for open sourcing it as well.
Yeah. So, everyone on the stream right now and in the Zoom, if you want to join, if you want to join our speakers and contribute to their work, I think your contributions will be welcome.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, gentlemen, then if we don't have any more questions, I will thank you once again for your contribution, for being a part of our conference. Thank you very much. We will get back to you regarding the logistics of speaker packages and all the rest. And good luck with your project. And please go on. Please keep up good work.
For sure. Pleasure being here, man. Pleasure being here.
Good luck, and see you around.
Thanks a lot, man.